everyone, so I'm going to show you how we're going to move from a traditional file to a digital file. So this is actually a digital file that was done from these two original files. I have a lot of different variations of this kind of digital file. Here's one in a frame. And the idea here is to be able to show you first how to take a scan or a photograph and then make sure that we don't have any dark spots, things like shadows. We want to be able to get that darker shadow on the bottom of this blue image to go away. And maybe there's going to be some spots that we want to get rid of. And then once it's digital, I've been able to alter quite a lot to be able to do whatever I want with these images. So that's going to be the things that I'm going to talk with you about today. Just really, how do you get from paper to digital? And you don't have to take it right back to paper again. The goal is to make it just a digital file that we can have ready for the web. All right, we'll talk soon. So here are the images. This is actually the tulip image that is coming from Visual Pump Gallery. You can see how I worked all of the images that were traditional and brought them in together to give them a look and feel that was consistent and altered colors. So I'm going to show you how to do some alteration of colors. This is something that's going to be able to come in both your traditional and your digital media files in terms of making the best of your images. So our goal is really making a scan of the file. Here the pieces are in green. So you can see this same file, the tulip piece, has been adjusted to become orange in this setup. So here it is in the orange file, and here's another version of it in the green file. All right, so here I am in Google Photos. You can open up the file in any of your photo editing software, but ultimately we're going to bring it into Photoshop. This is the edit bar in the edit tool in Google Photos. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to click on the crop tool, which will allow me to click on the rotate tool and get me to be in the right position. Now, one of the things I'm looking at is how dark it is right here and how light it is here. So I'm actually not looking at the image, but what is on the outside. And I like to take my pictures on a black or a white or a gray background. This just happens to be the wool surface that I have my workstation at. And I certainly can crop this right here, and you can go ahead and do that. Google Photos does not have the tool that brings edges in, so I'll have to do that in Photoshop. There are other software that has that. Instagram may have that, and other places. If you're using Instagram, you can certainly edit a lot, but they can be kind of artistic instead of shifting to what you need in terms of traditional. If you need to get it to twist in Google Photos, you go like that, and that kind of helps out. So I'm going to say done. And it can do some quick adjustments, right? But not always great. So this was the original. This is auto. That's actually pretty nice. I am probably going to go with the auto. Typically, it pretty much works. So I'm going to say done with that, and then we'll bring it into Photoshop and run some more edits. Now I'm going to download. So I'm going to click on the triple arrow and click download. Next, I'm going to click show in Finder. And you'll want to put this somewhere where you're going to be able to see it. So I'm going to drop mine currently on the desktop. And I have a whole bunch of other stuff up, but we'll be able to see which item I'm looking for. The flowers. I'll already rename this right now because that's a big long name. Flowers, Susan. Okay. So it's a JPEG as I brought it in. I could have made it a camera raw or something else, but this file is something that I'm ready to now bring into Photoshop. Not too bad of an issue bringing one JPEG in and then altering it. So here's my Photoshop file. I'm going to make this full screen, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is really how to work with this file to do the the adjustments that we need to do. So the first thing that I would want to do is bring the layers up, and I like to duplicate this layer. So you can control click or option click to duplicate the layer, and then I would say copy. And then we can rename this thing that says background and say original, so I can always go back to it in case I go too far with my adjustments. All right, so my next step is let's actually just try to alter one of them. That was your assignment. So I'm going to hit, I'm going to bring my tools back over here. I'm going to hit the C tool, which is crop, and I'm going to bring this in to the edges. And I don't want to keep my deckled edges from the paper, so I am going to just bring mine in. But if you do need to make it be more lined up, and if you do need those deckled edges, let me show you how to adjust that. I'm going to say return to this, which will say yes to that, but you can see that it's not fully correct. So I'm going to hit Command T, and I will hold down Option, or actually Command. On a Mac, on a PC, it will be Control. I'm just going to pull these until it's where they need to be. So I'm actually doing a little bit of a warping. It's not true warping, it's more of a distorting. You can see how you can really shift it. But I'm just trying to get these corners to line up. And that's what you'll want to do. And if you're trying to keep the deckled edge look, that kind of thing can be a little bit more labor intensive. So for my purposes, I'm going to bring them off because I don't use the deckled edge look in my pieces. So I can hold down Command on my Mac and keep on pulling this out. There are other tools that you can use too if you're feeling like, wow, it really got warped, it really looks out of place. We can do more to it. But I'm pretty much there. I don't like that little edge there, and we're always looking for these edges. So I'm going to just pull that off because I think that that's going to work nicely. Okay, here's some things I know what I can correct, and I can probably correct that. Maybe this and this. This is the tool that we would use to do more warping. I'm going to just hit return to show you that this hitting return will say yes to it. I still have my finger on that command button. I can let go at this point and then hit return, and it will do that crop. I'm going to try this again using that warping tool. So Command T, and then clicking this warp tool. You'll be able to see that if I push and pull this, I can get it to be to do more warping from exactly where I'm at. So that's an option if you need it. I'll plug in my computer. That always helps keep some power going. So I'm going to hit Command period. That will stop that transform because I don't need that, but you may need it. So I'm going to hit this tool to get me going. So the next thing I'm going to work on is adjustment layers. So we talked about curves. Curves are actually a pretty important thing. We can see when I click on this adjustment layer, you can see that this is all the whites because we have white here, and I'm in RGB profile. Blacks are down here, and this has kind of a nice little curve here. I could push this more over to this area to bring more whites out. This paper happens to be cream though, so I am going to keep it kind of there. What I want to do is adjust for contrast. So in order to do that, we're going to make an S curve. So we're going to make this go down just a tiny bit. And from this section, maybe take this up a little bit. Maybe not. When you see more image coming into the file, like when I take this down, and I'm looking at this area, we start to see some more image. And with this watercolor, it actually might be good to be able to bring more information in. Now I'm going to flatten this curve. A lot of times you want an S curve to kind of come like this, and I'm exaggerating the form right now, but because they typically are pretty close to there, but an S curve to bring more contrast. Essentially, we're looking for how can we make it look great on our image. So I like the way that this curve is handled right now. The next thing we want to do is take ourselves back to layers. I want to show you that this is without the curve adjustment, and this is with the curve adjustment. So I'm just trying to make it look beautiful. I'm not, at this point, trying to match the original. I'm trying to make it look like it's a great image. So curves deals with value adjustments, but I would like to adjust some of the color too. So I'm going to click here on the layer that I want to work on. I call this a half moon cookie. I'm going to click on that. It's the new adjustment layer, and I'm going to use hue saturation. If we work with this, we can make it darker, make it lighter. Typically, I don't like using this, so I'm going to hit 0 on that. You can saturate it. You can desaturate it, make it completely black and white. Take this back to 0. And we can also adjust the actual hue, and this is some of the things that I play with. I'm going to take this back to 0 and see if I alter it just a little bit into one area or another, if it's going to feel good, or if I saturate it up just a bit or desaturate it, it's going to be nice. Sometimes with those curves, when we make a curve and it goes light to dark and we make it higher contrast, the saturation gets too much. So sometimes taking it down in saturation is good. So to test to see if we like that, I'm going to turn the eyeball on and off. So here's with my hue sat on, and then I'm going to toggle it off. So the eyeball is off on that. That was the original, and that's my new. So I have to ask myself, do I like this new? And I have to say I don't on this one. So I'm going to not keep that hue set. So I'm going to actually trash it. So I'm going to hit yes to that delete and trash it altogether. We're going to turn this original off. So the next thing that I want to show you all is how to use clone stamping. Clone stamping is one of the things that is really helpful with fixing things that could be errors. So here's one example where I think I can really alter that. So S is a shortcut which will give you clone stamp. Clone stamp is right here. And the key to this is to, you're always going to be working directly on this layer, and you're kind of copying and pasting within this layer, and that's why I keep the original. So I'm going to hold down Option. Also, this is a blurry brush. You typically do not want something that's a really hard brush. Sometimes we don't want something that's too blurry either, so we're going to have to test this. We want it to be bigger than the blemish, but not too big. We want it to capture from an area that's like it. So I'm going to capture from here because that's very similar to there, or something like this. If I captured from here, it's going to get that shape directly in there, and I don't think that's going to be good. So somewhere that is that kind of same color. The key to this is you're going to hold down Option. That gives you this like camera lens thing. And if you click, it's kind of taking a picture of that one area. Now I'm letting go of Option and I'm coming back down, and you can see it's carrying with me that color. So it's able to, if I click, it's going to be able to bring that to it. Now this is set to opacity 40%, which means I would have to click several times in order for it to come through. And so I clicked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make it come through. I like it set to a lower opacity because I don't want it to become too hard. Now, that's not going to just blemish fix everything. So for instance, this area is not going to fix this area. If I click here, it's going to not do what I wanted. Actually, let me try to show you how you can make a mistake with this. Let me take this color, Option, and then I'm going to click here. And you can see I've made a new kind of shape there, but it doesn't fit there. So you always want to get it to match. I'm Command-Z to undo it. On a PC, you would Control-Z. So I'm looking for any more blemishes that I think are not really functional for the image. This one is one example. Maybe this, but it's a watercolor, so there's going to be a lot of that sort of stuff. So here, what I'm going to do is look for a place that has that kind of a toning to it, which is a little tricky. If I want to get rid of that. Actually, what I could do with this is take my brush smaller. So there's brackets. The brackets are next to the letters O and P. The left bracket makes it smaller, and the right bracket makes it bigger. So I'm going to make it kind of a small one. It's kind of unusual for me. I'm going to Option, click that, and then click that a couple times until we get it. And so that feels more natural to me. Same kind of thing here, Option, click, click, click. Okay, so it feels more natural. I don't want to get rid of any of, like, all of the little white things. There's a lot of fun that comes along with some of this stuff. But I will show you how I could wash over this. It feels a little bit too bright for what's going on. So I'm going to make my bracket bigger, grab some of this color option. So I just kind of have darkened that area up. Do you see how I'm getting that edge there and I really don't want it? So I'm going to come to this area, option, click, and put that stuff around. So this is where a mistake happened. There's in my clone stamping, there's a line that is happening. You can see that I'm able to kind of duplicate that flower right there. And you don't want to be able to do that. So I'm going to Command Z. It's not the right place to have it. So you want to be able to, it's copying whatever is that direction away from the clone stamp. Hope that helps you. It's a good time to save it. So we're going to File, Save As, and I'll bring this over to here, Flower Susan -A, because I've made some new things. I'll do Desktop, New Folder, Image Capture Flower, and hit Create, and that is looking good to me right now. We always want to embed this color profile sRGB big long number because that is our print number, but it also works with our with our web profile. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to hit Save. I'm going to keep the maximize compatibility and say OK. So I'm actually at a pretty good place. If I take us to the image capture and adjustment to that section, there's a couple of things that I will need to do. We talked about doing a Hue Sat adjustment and curve adjustment layers. We've done that. We've also transformed the image so that it's squared and cropped. So it doesn't have to be squared, just kind of within that rectangle, right? And then sharpening. That's the next thing that I want to work through. That link is just bringing me further down. So we're going to go to Filters, Sharpen, choose Unsharp Mask, use these numbers as a starting point, 100, 1.8/0. Then immediately edit, fade, Unsharp Mask about 75%. So we're going to work on sharpening the image. It's pretty blurry right now, so the goal is to make sure that we have a really nice crisp edging. It's important to not look at it at this 72 or whatever that you're at. It should be zoomed in, so I'm hitting Z for zoom or the magnifying glass. Click on it to 100% or option click or control click it on a PC till it's not 66.67 but 50%. So you want to move back and forth between 100, 50, and 25%. So I'm going to go back to 100. It's a good place to look at it. And then go to Filter. And I'm looking for Sharpen. And there's a lot of different sharpen. And I've explored a lot of these areas, and they're all good for different things. For what we're doing, the Unsharp Mask works really well. So it brings up this Unsharp Mask filter area. You can move this around, and in fact I do want to move it to a location where we have a combination of the watercolor and the pencil areas. Okay, so in my website I was saying bring it to 100, and let's take a look at what that kind of looks like. And then a radius of 1.8. I'm just going to type it in there, and 0 threshold. So let's take a look with the preview on, which is checked, and then off. Should be a little bit more blurry. So moving through those. Now this is just a kind of a standard to give you a sense of it. Amount is like the number of pixels, the radius of the pixels is the how much radius it has. If we do this more, it's going to get more and more sharp. You can see it's kind of getting too sharp there, and it loses its kind of quality. So you want to kind of move this until it feels like everything feels unique and different. And the amount will also play with that too. So it's up to you how much you want to go. And in fact, if I went too far, it's kind of getting some artifacts, and that's why that much won't make sense. So I'm going to bring this back down to about the 100%. That kind of makes sense. And then to let you know, threshold actually makes it blurry. So you can see as I move this up, it makes it blurry again. So you can actually have the threshold be the thing that kind of counteracts the radius. So you can bring that radius up and then bring that threshold up. But then it kind of is smoothing things along the way. So I keep the threshold at 0, keep that radius down to 1.8, 100. This typically works for me. I'm going to say okay. And sometimes this is actually too far. So what I like to do is go to edit. And this is the only time in the time period of when we're working through this that this will work. You have to hit edit immediately, and then not undo, but fade. Fading will only work immediately after you do it. It won't hold itself in its memory in the history. So it went over to another window, so I'm going to bring it over here. And I'm going to fade it. Usually, my typical thing is I fade at 75%. But let's take a look. If I fade it all the way to 0, it starts to feel a little bit more blurry. Fade it to 100, which is just no fade. It's a little bit crispy, in my opinion. So somewhere 75% typically works for me. Preview on and off. So toggle that to kind of experience the change in the blur factor. So I'll say OK to here. And now I have a sharpened image with one curve layer on it. So I'm pretty good to go. I'm going to zoom out and see if there's any other areas that I might want to do some clone masking, clone tooling with. And I'm also looking at the edges. I'm looking at all these edges, making sure that they're not doing anything weird. There's just a little weird area here, so I'll do maybe a little clone tool right there. S is the clone tool, and this is kind of a big clone tool for what I need right now. So I'm bracketing down, left bracket down, that's the tool next to the P. I'm going to hold down Option to get this camera picture, and then I'm going to click until I have it, and bam, we've got a beautiful little edge. You can sometimes do that all along the edge. For example, we've got kind of an edge that is tracing an edge, and I really don't want that to be there. Although it is the edge of a nice little watercolor thing, it kind of looks like the edge is a sharpened edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone stamp, and what you want to do is clone stamp down from it so that when you go up, you won't get this dark edge on it. So S for clone stamp. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to hold down Option. You only have to hold down until you get that little icon, which is, it's the camera area, right? So you're going to click that. And now I've let go of Option, and now I'm going to go up to here. And I actually might, for this one, want to bring it up to like 75% or something. So now I'm going to kind of bring that. And this is just softening what looked like a line to me. And it is kind of beautiful down there. So I'm going to keep some of that. Do you see how we were able to correct that area? So this is helpful when you have like numbers on here from a camera, or someone photobombs your image. It's hard to photobomb a watercolor, but I suppose it could have happened. And I think I'm really kind of good to go. After this, I like to kind of run just one more curve. Often I'm not quite as intense as I'd like to be. So I'm going to run a curve, and this is where I want to ask myself, do I want to brighten and darken? So this is my common S curve that I run on things to kind of make them kind of the intensity that you want to have across the web. So this is before and this is after, and I think I do like this small S curve that I've placed on that. It's pretty common for us to place one more S curve on top of it. So final S curve. How did I rename that? I double clicked. It's important to do names of your files, of your layers, I mean, so that we don't just have layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. We want to be able to know what it is. All right, so I am ready to actually save this file. Let's see what we've got. So we're saving file, save as, flowers, Susan-A. And because we're doing this as an assignment, there's some rules for the naming convention. Image adjustment, Flowers, Susan Bonner. First and last name is what I'm looking for. And that should do it. We're going to embed that sRGB color profile and hit save and maximize the compatibility. And that should do it. Thanks for working with me on the file prep of a beautiful image, sharpening it, making sure it's ready for the web after you worked on it from a photo. Next, we're going to work on the idea if we have kind of bad lighting to start with. What if we have an image that's kind of dark in one area and it's pretty good everywhere else? One of the goals to do that, first of all, I can show you how I kind of pre-baked this. It's supposed to look like this, but I made it look bad so that I can show you how to correct it. So the next thing that I'm going to do, this would be if you have a shadow, maybe your hand was in the way, maybe you had light coming from just one side instead of both sides. So the goal of what we're going to try to do is make a new adjustment layer. And then, okay, actually, before we're going to make the new adjustment layer, I would say grab the selection tool and set that selection tool to have a feather. Oops, I didn't grab it. So feather. Feather is kind of a blend. It's not a sharp line. So if I were to make a cut with this right now, it would be a blurry, blended line. I like the 100. 250 is the most that you can go. We may need to go up from the 100. So let's just take a look at it. I'm going to try to make it kind of like around in here. And when you do it on these Photoshop files, I'm going to hold down my spacebar, which gets me my hand, but I need to hit F in order to be able to actually do that. It's not going to get that, so I want to, just from history of knowing how this works, I'm going to hold down Shift and add to it. You see that my lasso now has a little plus on it, so I'm going to actually add to this part, and it should be able to get more of that. I'm not too concerned about that part. And then we're going to go to the Half Moon Cookie, which can give us an adjustment layer, and I'm going to run a curves on this. And our goal is going to be to add lightness back into this, but not too much. You can see like now I went too far. And in fact, you can see that my edging, it feels a little bit dark through here. So I see that I'll need to adjust where I made my dark area, and I can do that, but that's helpful to see it. I can see that I'm kind of getting there. I'm kind of bringing it lighter like I'm supposed to. If I bring too much darkness, it's not going to be right. So I'm kind of playing with this until I get it to be where it needs to be. But I would like this to be lighter. I think that this area is not pushed enough. So I'll keep this curve. It's something that I'm going to be able to turn off and on. So it's brightening up when I have it on. I just need to expand this. So what I'm going to do is, this is the mask. The mask has white where it's affecting it using the curve or whatever adjustment that I have, and it's black wherever I'm not allowing that curve to take place. So if you are clicked here instead of on that part, so clicking on the picture of that black and white and hitting B for brush, making sure it's not a hard brush but a nice big softy. And if we're wanting to add more, we need to add more white to it. So I'm going to switch this and just scrub across this to add more lightness to it. And so I'm rubbing a couple of times because I'm trying to add to it, and I think that that's probably going to work. To test that, I can go through history and see what that change looked like. So there's before, and that's after. And I think I'm pretty much where I want to be. So I'm liking that new direction, and I think that I have a great looking image. So just for reference, you can run these adjustments where they have soft adjustments if you have lighting issues. And that's kind of an important element when we have hotspots. So hotspots require blurry edges to bring curves into them. All right, looks like we're done with this. You know, you want to save your file and and show it off to everybody.